Hello folks, Alex here, this is Alex Unabridged, and today it's episode 1 of Adventures in Genre, and January is for jokes. So yes, welcome to the channel, or welcome back if the case may be. Yes, today is the first episode of my Read More Widely project. Try some genres that I've never tried before or am widely underread on. So I've picked a genre per month for the year, and the first one for January is for jokes, so we're on comedy for January. We are into February now. I'm a little bit behind on getting this out, but yes, I had a few laughs in my reading for January. So yes, let's crack on with the first of 2 books. So up first was Hitch-Hiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I was, it's one of those where it got to the point where I was like, how have I still not read this? So I thought, I knew it had a decent audiobook read by Stephen Fry. So I thought, we'll give it a go. I do tend to like my comedy in other forms, in terms of TV, films, things like that. Quite surreal, quite absurd. I used to love some of the more off-the-wall comedy shows, sort of around the early 2000s, I guess. British comedy series like Spaced with Simon Pegg, that was great, I loved that. And sketch shows, things like, again, British sketch shows like Green Wing or Smack the Pony, things like that. So going into a somewhat absurdist comedy book of Hitch-Hikers, I thought, yeah, there's a pretty decent chance I'm going to enjoy this. So yeah, for anyone who hasn't read it, I'm sure there are a couple of others out there like me. Basic summary, we follow Arthur Dent, who is an Earthman, who basically gets catapulted into a series of misadventures in space. We meet him when he's trying to prevent his house from being destroyed for to make way for a new highway, but that turns out to be the least of his problems. He meets his friend Ford and gets dragged to the pub by Ford, who informs him that there's only minutes left before the Earth is destroyed by a callous race of aliens called the Vogons. And they're destroying the Earth to make way, ironically, for a hyperspace highway. Fortunately for Arthur, Ford turns out to be an alien in disguise, who is a writer for the aforementioned Hitch-Hiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and Ford manages to hitch a ride on one of the Vogon spaceships that's floating above the Earth, ready to destroy it, and takes Arthur with him. And from there we follow Arthur and Ford and a various cast of other wild characters on their escapades around space, basically. So we've got some fantastic characters in this, some fantastic character names, I have to say. The character naming by Douglas Adams is excellent. We've got President of the Galaxy, Zaphod Beeblebrox, and his human companion Trillian. We've got Marvin the depressed android, who I find hilarious. My dog is called Marvin, not at all depressed, completely opposite end of the spectrum. Always happy, always like bouncy and joyful. So that did amuse me. And we've got Eddie, the overly upbeat computer, who I particularly enjoyed, and reminded me a little bit of a character out of Red Dwarf, another one of the comedy series that I loved as a teenager. And the character in that is Talkie Toaster. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of influence, I think, from Hitch-Hikers into Red Dwarf. They are very different, but you can definitely see the influences. And it's got, Hitch-Hikers has got one of, I think, my favourite character names ever in Slarty Bartfast, which did make me chuckle every time I heard it on the audiobook. So yeah, it was really fun, really fun. It was just what I needed for like a dark January, kind of grim month. January is often a bit of a low month for me, and I think a lot of other people. So this was exactly what I needed in that kind of month. It is very absurd. It's random as hell. It really is. You kind of never know where Adams is gonna go next. With his descriptions or just random, almost like thoughts. It's almost like his brain must work wonderfully creatively in terms of just the randomness of what comes out. The characters are really funny. They're well written. They've got a lot of flaws. There are characters which could be really unlikable, but they are. There's always something endearing about them. Apart from the Vogons. But yeah, they are. They're all different. They're all interesting characters, and the character relationships are good. They're funny. I liked seeing a lot of the references, seeing where the references in other works come from. I've seen things pop up in various places over the years that I haven't known where those original kind of quotes or what have you have come from. And now I realise it's Hitch-Hikers, and it was really nice to be able to connect those dots, if you like, and see where the influences have gone and see where people have been referencing from. So like, I'd already kind of come across, the meaning of life, the universe and everything, quotes like "so long and thanks for all the fish," and one that sparked a particularly nice nostalgic memory for me was Pangalactic Gargle Blasters, the drinks that are in Hitch-Hikers. Yeah, when I was at university in Hull, 20 years ago now, there was a fantastically weird nightclub called Spiders, hidden away on an industrial estate somewhere in Hull. Not the most salubrious area. And they did these crazy cocktails. And there was one called the Pangalactic Gargle Blaster. And pretty much all of their cocktails came as a pint. They were lethal, but really cheap. And yeah, they'd done their own version, and it was very nice. I have to say, it was very nice. But I never connected it, obviously, with Hitch-Hikers because I didn't know the text, and also because Spiders had lots of really strangely named cocktails, which half of which they'd made up themselves. But that was a real nice little just kind of spark of nostalgia for me, a nice little memory that came from hearing that. Was there anything I didn't like about it? Not that I'd say I didn't like. The ending felt a little bit abrupt. It kind of, did feel like it had kind of stopped halfway through the story. But then it's kind of, I think it's because, it references the sequel. That's kind of obviously where they're going next. And so it kind of is halfway through a story. It wasn't so much that it annoyed me. If anything, it just kind of made me kind of go, "Oh right, I need to read the next one then." So in that respect, it did its job. Couple of bits that dragged maybe in terms of pace, but not enough to make it unenjoyable. It was just a couple of bits where I found my attention wandering a little bit, but very minor amounts of it. I will continue to read the rest of the books in the series, and so as long as I'm enjoying them, I'll keep reading in the series, because they are just great, funny reads. They're just enjoyable snippets of kind of getting away from real life and just plugging in and just having a laugh, and just marveling at the mind of Douglas Adams, really, and how he's able to come up with these absurd but funny concepts. So yes, so that is the first of my books, a great success, I would say. The second of the books that I read for this month, or last month, should I say, was one that I found whilst trawling the Audible Plus catalogue. I wasn't really sure where else to go to, with comedy. It's like, as I say, I don't watch or listen to or read a huge amount of comedy anyway. But yeah, so I thought I'll just have a trawl through, see what there is on the Plus catalogue, see what's in the comedy section. So yes, I was searching through and came across Queen Lucia by E.F. Benson, which I haven't read any E.F. Benson before, but I had seen an adaptation of kind of an amalgamation of some of the books in the Lucia series, the Map and Lucia series. Yeah, back in like 2015, I think it was, at Christmas, and it was hilarious. I watched it with my wife and my sister over several nights, and we were in tears with it. So I thought, right, well, at least I know that I like, the kind of the world, the characters, etc. At least in terms of their adapted forms. So I thought, well, I might as well give it a crack. I like the 1920s as a time period, certainly in terms of the design, the visuals, and stuff like that. And the fashions, that it's a period of history, like certainly in British history, that I've always been interested in, that side of things, like the design stuff. I love Art Deco and things like that. So yeah, so I thought, at least, it's something that I, have some experience of in terms of the time period, etc. Because I'm not great with classics or older stuff. Generally, I don't read a lot of that kind of stuff. So I thought, yeah, 1920s, that's not too bad. Not really thinking, God, that's 100 years ago. So yes, what is it about, in case you don't know? It follows the antics of Queen Lucia, whose real name is Emmeline Lucas, but she's known as Lucia. She's the social queen of a small English village, a very English village, and it follows, her antics and manipulations and one-upmanship, things like that, between her and her friends and neighbours. Lucia is very pretentious. She likes to sound cultured, but really isn't. She'll cherry pick things to sound cultured, but actually often doesn't really know what she's talking about. She wants to be the first person to discover like new trends and fads and things like that. And she hates it if any of her friends or neighbours discover them before her, and so she then wants to kind of steal them away and be the one to introduce the village to this new exciting thing. She's it follows kind of how she wants to sort of maintain her reign as Queen Bee, and how some of her friends and neighbours, Daisy Quantock, her I think a next door neighbour, wants to kind of knock her off her perch. Why should Lucia be the queen? And so Daisy's looking to kind of get one over on Lucia. So yeah, it kind of follows them, their manipulations, and kind of the trouble that they end up in because of these kind of antics. So yes, it was very funny in the most part. It's a social satire, and I do like satire. It's heavily tinged with farce as well, and I do like a good British farce. It's got some great kind of bitchy one-liners and observations by the characters. Characters aren't too over the top. You can quite easily believe that this kind of person existed within that sort of society. It's quite, kind of upper class privileged sort of society of 1920s rural or, village life. And that, people like that still exist. It can be very cutting at times. Benson was quite acerbic in his humour, but it's also quite affectionate. I think Lucia, from what I've read, Lucia was based on someone he knew. So although he kind of went to town on that kind of character, there is an affection there as well. It's as camp as knickers, and I loved that about it. I do like some good camp humour. It was very, very amusing in that respect. what didn't I like so much about it? It's a little slow in places. Yeah, it kind of lost my attention a little bit in parts, and it feels, for me, it feels dated. But then it is 100 years old now. It's very much from a different time, and so therefore the attitudes, that were kind of present in that era do come through. It's you've got to remember it. At this time, the British Empire was still a thing, so you have got kind of tinges of that kind of imperial colonial attitude coming through, and there are several instances of what we today would define as casual racism, and that's all part of that's part of the historical context, most definitely. It's you can't expect something written 100 years ago to have the same and present the same sort of sensibilities that we have today. But as a modern reader, it did make me kind of wince in a couple of places. So it's important to kind of acknowledge that stuff's in there. It can be uncomfortable to hear or to read, that kind of thing. But you do have to put it in context. You have to take that into account. So yeah, it's but in the most part, where it was, at its kind of catty, campy, kind of farcical humour. It was very amusing. So yes, so in conclusion, for both of those and the month of January and the jokes, I enjoyed the reading experience of both. Elements of both were very funny. I definitely preferred Hitch-Hikers. That is definitely more my cup of tea. And I will go on and read the others in the series for that. I probably won't read any more of the Mapp and Lucia books. It's probably just not for me. To kind of go on and rip through. There's quite a lot in the series. But I really enjoyed the experience of reading something of that time. To experience something new in terms of that type of writing and that era of writing was really good. But yeah, I probably just didn't enjoy it enough to keep me reading more. I think I prefer to watch things set in that period. From sort of modern, either modern adaptations, or modern writing that's set in that era. I think I prefer the visuals on that, because I do I like, as I say, I like the design. I like the look of stuff set in that period. So I think I will stick to the visual stuff for that. But yeah, it was great to have a couple of much lighter, funnier things for this dark month, to get away from my my usual monsters, serial killers, horror stuff that I tend to read. It was a really good change to try some new and highly amusing stuff. So yes, next month, or this month I should say now, February. February is for fantasy, and so I've picked 3. Whether I'll get through all of them, I don't know, because one of them is quite long. But yes, the 3 that I've picked are The Final Empire, the first in the Mistborn series of books, by Brandon Sanderson, because that is, by all accounts, high fantasy that is a bit easier to get into. My experience with high fantasy is pretty much Tolkien, and whilst I enjoyed what I've read of Tolkien, I also struggle with it a bit, the style, the language, stuff like that sometimes, and the pacing sometimes. So yeah, it'd be interesting to try something modern in that. I have started that. I'm a few hours into that on the audiobook. So yeah, should finish that by this weekend, hopefully. Second up, I've got Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry, which is more high fantasy but much lower stakes, as the tagline suggests. Cozy fantasy, so that will be very interesting. I'm kind of intrigued. I never thought I'd be reading cozy fantasy. So yeah, that will be very interesting to see what I make of that. And then the third one, fingers crossed that I get to it, will be Stormfront by Jim Butcher. So some urban fantasy, the first book in the series of the Dresden Files. I've never read any urban fantasy, but I do like urban fantasy in my TV and film viewing. So it's about time I try some literature in that little subgenre there. So that's the plan for this month, for my reading of this month, for Adventures in Genre. And the wrap-up for that will be out, early in March, hopefully, when I get my act together and record it, when I've finished. So yes, that's all I've got for you today. So yes, thank you very much for watching today. If you enjoy the video, please do consider giving us a like and potentially subscribing for more. If you've read either of the books I've talked about today, please do feel free to drop a comment down below. Let me know how you got on with them, what you thought of them. I will be back very soon with more ramblings on all things bookish. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.